Today we are going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on Afghanistan economy. And we think it's necessary to have a discussion about this and how we can help our entrepreneurs and our companies in this time. So again, it's my honor, it's my pleasure that I have a professor with me. And let me start with a question.
Yes.
My first question we can start with we have a lots of construction in Afghanistan running. We have built roads, we have built companies, we have built oxygen companies, we have built like many companies that they are still running, and we have a good population of employees that they are working. And we have our entrepreneurs that they are solving the society problem. My question is that how they can run their business with the crisis that we have right now and globally, especially in Afghanistan with another type of background.
Well, it's a difficult question to start, Tariq, but let me try. I think that first it's a global crisis. I mean, there is no doubt every country is affected. It's not only Afghanistan, it's all the countries in your region. It's also in Asia. It's also in Europe and the United States. And the reason it's important to keep that in mind is that it's not only affecting us, but it's affecting also our client, our suppliers, everybody. So we have at the same time a crisis in consumption and a crisis in production. And it means that for entrepreneurs during this very difficult period of time, the objective is to survive, simply to go above this crisis period until things are getting better, and they will get better, there is no doubt. I think we start to see in many countries people going out of confinement, people who are starting to resume to work, and I think it's going to improve. It's not going to improve extremely quickly, but it's going to improve. So to answer your question, at that stage, I think that entrepreneurs have to be very sensitive to what's happening in the market, what are now the needs of people, and how you can respond to those needs while still making profit, because I think that enterprise to survive needs to make profit. And profit, Tariq, you will remember, is something to reward that you are taking a risk. And because entrepreneurs are taking a risk, they should make profit. And if they make profit, it's because they have an added value on society. And it means that people are ready to pay for the product. So today you don't have the choice. You have to be a social entrepreneur in order to survive in this type of environment.
Yes. And you mentioned it is a hard time, the recovery time, like how it will be. Will it be like a U shape, a V shape, like W shape recovery, or will it be like another totally shape?
Yeah, actually nobody knows at that stage. But as you may remember, there is something which...
Sorry, I should just get up and walk because of the room lights.
Okay, just to answer your question, I think we are in a situation where if you remember a traditional recession, the one we have had in the past, usually it takes between 12 months and 18 months to recover. Some have been faster, the so-called V-shape you have mentioned. Some have been longer. Depends also of the country. For example, Japan was a L shape. It went down and it stays down for almost a decade. The problem is that every recession we have had in the past was very different of this one, because we have had recession which were triggered by the stock exchange. Some were triggered by the banking sectors collapsing. Some were triggered by the price of oil. But we never had a recession which has been triggered by a drop in consumption, by the fact that people were locked in and could not go into the office, or the companies could not work. So my feeling, to answer your question, is that in the very short term, people are going to buy some products because they didn't buy for 2 months. So they need to catch up with few little things of life. And then after, for those who can, they are probably going to save a bit of money because they feel it may last quite some time.
Yes, the saving thing, the consumption behavior, like I was thinking about it, then we will see some kind of change, psychological change of the consumption's behavior of people, like.
Yes, it's interesting because, as I said, I think now we are going to see during the few months a peak in consumption, but then after it's going to go down. It was interesting for me to see, you know, in the United States of America, they have given some helicopter money. You know, they gave $1,200 to every person. And well, now we start to see how it was spent. And the very poor people did spend it immediately. But the middle class actually spent 1/3 and saved 2/3 because they are worried. At the top of the range, those who are almost at the limit of $90,000, they use the money to speculate on the stock exchange. So it depends your level of revenue, but still, if people are worried, they will keep some of the money in savings just for the rainy days, for what will happen later.
Yes, yes, that will be a better idea because we don't know how long will it last.
Exactly. We don't know how long it will last. We don't know especially how strong will be the recovery, because this is the point. As you know, with all the distancing measures we are having now, you know, 1 meter, 2 meters, and wearing masks, difficulties to travel, etc., it is slowing down the recovery. There is no doubt, because the economy is not at full capacity. And when the economy is not at full capacity, enterprises have a tendency to save, to reduce the workforce, and that's not good for the recovery either. So we need to be very careful that we don't have a kind of spiraling effect going down and pushing the economy down. And this is what is perhaps very worried. It's not only the length, it's how strong will be the recovery.
Yes, but we can see some businesses, some entrepreneurs that they are coming in the market with the new kind of opportunity that the crisis created. Like, will it take some part of like the negative side that we are having right now in the economy or not?
The experience, Tariq, has shown that whenever you have an economic crisis, generally the year after you have the creation of a lot of new companies. In 2009, we had Slacks, we had Uber, we had all those Zoom, all those companies coming on the market because they saw that there were new opportunities. And I think that this is exactly what we are going to see. People today are going to see new opportunities in the field, for example, how people are going to consume, how they are going to order products, how they are going to communicate with other people. And I think that in general, it's a period which is very intense in creation of enterprise just after a crisis, because the business models are changing, and because also you need new entrepreneurs and especially a new mindset. And if you have this, I mean, you have a lot of creation of enterprises.
Yes, and I think in a time of crisis, people tend to help each other, and they became more kind, and they want to help as much as they want. So I think there will be less challenges, or what do we think? Like, do we think that there will be also challenges between entrepreneurs, or it will be like a helpful giving and taking like between them?
I think what is striking in companies is that they do both. They are competing with each other because this is the name of the game. You have to compete. But also they do cooperate on a number of things. For example, I think they will cooperate a lot on standards for sanitary measures in order to make sure that you respect the same standard regarding health, the protection of people. They may supply the same product together, you know, make some cooperative to buy together a certain product. they will cooperate a lot on standards because this is in the interest of nobody to have multiple standards in parallel. So I think we are going to see both, but I think that at the beginning, we will have people with a lot of ideas or entrepreneurial ideas. And to go on your point, which is very correct, I think that during this crisis, we have had a feeling of more intense solidarity, where people felt, you know, this is a global crisis and we need to be much more, as you say, kind, but a high level of solidarity between people. And suddenly people, I don't know, in your country, in my country, they discovered they had neighbors, that there are people living next to them that they didn't know, that it was time to know, to ask how they were doing, were they okay, etc. So I think it is changing a little bit the mindset inside the society.
Yes, we have seen it also in Afghanistan, that there were many entrepreneurs, and which they have rented their places or shops and or companies. They're just forgiven that, okay, you go for free for 2-3 months.
Yes, you're right. We have seen that also, where they didn't ask for the rent to be paid, or they ask, you know, the loans to be paid on a longer period. Now, of course, let's face it, there is an interest in it not to have your people getting bankrupt, because I think, to go back to your question about the length of the crisis, in the short term, the immediate objective, it's a crisis of liquidity. So you need to make sure that people have money. And that's why, you know, you will say, don't pay the rent, etc. But the more it lasts, the more you may have a crisis in solvability, which means people going bankrupt. And that's a different story. So if it's a short crisis, you know, you put money on the market to help people to do something. But if it lasts too long, then I think it is much more critical for the entire system. So we are not yet there, but people are a bit worried.
Yes, people are a bit worried. And how banks can help? Like we have our central bank,
Yes.
and we have so many other banks also in Afghanistan there, where they are in the market. How they can provide, which type of financial service will be useful?
I think that one of the lessons we have learned, from the past recessions, is when those recessions are taking place, the first basic principle is to make sure that the money continue to flow inside the economy. And that's why you have two aspects. The first one is the central banks printing money or lowering the interest rates, or you have the government with fiscal stimulus. But the objective is the same. The objective is to make sure that the money continue to go into the economy, and that it goes especially into the banking system, and that it goes also into the enterprises, and it goes also to the people who are leading the money. So I feel that the role of the banks is to help those enterprises to survive in the short term, as we have mentioned, this crisis in liquidity, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises. This is where it is important, because these are the ones who don't have so much cash reserves. These are the ones who are needing a bit of loan and oxygen, as we have mentioned. And that's where the bank should be active. Now, here there is a fundamental principle, is that a lot of loans given by the banks are guaranteed by the states in many countries. But this has to be a fast process. It has to take place very quickly. I mean, most companies cannot ask for a guaranteed loan and wait for 6 weeks in order to have it. They need to have it within days. Yes. And this is the only, so I think here there is something which is important, is that the banks not only have to provide money, but they have to provide money quickly.
Quickly. Yes, so we have some branches that they will probably broke down more than in other branches.
Yes.
So how is that will be like in the future? Like, will it be like this, or they will come together and will help each other? Like, will be a separation between two branches, or it will be like again a helpful community, like helping each other?
I think that there is no doubt there are some industry sectors which are much more exposed to the crisis than others. We can obviously, the travel industry, the shipping industry, these are industries which are far more exposed than telecommunication, for example. Okay, I think that these industry sectors will have to be held by the state. There is no other possibilities, with guaranteed loan, with the banks behind, etc. And here in those sectors, we are likely to see a lot of consolidation of the market. Some companies disappearing, other companies getting together for joint venture or the rest, but we will see some consolidation. As far the other part of the economy, which is more perhaps technology oriented or even more traditional, like agriculture, etc., and you are very strong in agriculture in Afghanistan,
yes.
They will need to continue to operate. They need a bit of money, but you know, let's face it, sooner or later people want to eat. So you will need to have the agricultural good, and you will need to be able to produce efficiently and to export.
Yes, and if the governments take over the private sector, will it be like in the future, how it will be react again, like how we can have our private companies back again as a private company, not like under government's control?
The first thing is that the government should not take over the company. The government should lend money to the company, give some loans. And that is a very big difference. Now, there are some provision about the fact that if a company cannot reimburse the loan, it could be what we call debt equity swap. You know, you transform your debt into an equity in the company. But I think that a lot of government don't want to be involved anymore into running at least the company which should be in the private sector. The only temptation will be in companies which are probably, yeah, the only temptation is about companies which are probably running infrastructure or community or travel, etc. Here, sometimes the governments have a tendency to believe that critical infrastructure should be in the hand of the government or the state and not in private company. I think this is a debate which is going to be reopened.
Yes, a real debate.
Definitely. Those in the real private sector, which is not involved in infrastructure, I think there is no problem. I think the government will lend money but don't want to intervene. But I think they will want to intervene in infrastructure. And number two, in those companies maybe that they consider to be the national champions, which are very precious for the state and which they do not want to see being bought over by another country. So here, I think the concept of national champions, which had very much disappeared during the past few years, is going to come back and to re-emerge.
Nice. Another thing that we have talked about is the agriculture part of Afghanistan. We are depending on a marginal part to export our agriculture. So now with this time, we cannot export so much. So can we talk about this a little bit more?
Yes, first of all, I do believe that exporting agricultural goods will pick up rather faster than slower, simply because people need to eat. So the problem with exporting of agricultural goods is that, of course, you are depending on two things. Number one, on transport, making sure that all the shipping industry and the transport industry, the logistics, is back into action. And that is, for the moment, not the case. And the second thing is going to be pricing, because we are seeing that the commodities price in agricultural good, but also in raw material, in energy, etc., is going down and has been going down drastically. So I think that we need to balance the two things. The logistic will start again relatively soon, But on the other hand, I think that the pricing situation is still a question mark. And what we could say is that it's probably going to be volatile. I mean, because as long as the economy is not really recovering fast, what we have discussed a moment ago, I think it will have an impact on the pricing of every commodities. But within those commodities vulnerability, most probably agriculture and pharmaceutical are the two which are relatively protected compared to others. As I said, because people need to eat.
Yes. And with this time, we have a lower tax income in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
For the government. And how will this affect the government's planning for future?
You are thinking about the tax receipt?
Yes.
Well, I think this is one of the key issue in many emerging economies like yours. It's not only to make sure that the economy is picking up, but also that the government is taxing people in such a way that he gets revenues without killing the economy, without killing the companies, and without making such a level of taxes that people are going to escape the official economy and go into the underground economy. But I think that a very efficient tax system, which is fair to everybody, is really a condition for a good economy to pick up. And I do believe that in this respect, what is important is not so much to know it's a high, low tax system. It is to have one which is transparent, and it is to have one which is predictable, where you know this is going to be the rules of the game. Everybody is going to play the same rules. It's going to be transparent. And at least during the 3-4 next years, it's going to remain stable. I think this is very important for companies and people.
Yes, but predictability, it's very hard right now. Yes, but our companies in Afghanistan, they try to predict the future as much as they can, but we have lots of crises.
Yes, I know.
Yes, we have lots of crises, and we haven't known that there will be a corona or a COVID will come in the future. And they were good in planning for the crisis, but this crisis was like a little bit different. So my question is that, like, how we can deal with the new crisis which is coming.
Yes, you're right. This crisis was very different. I think companies have for a long time developed crisis management. You know, when something unexpected would come, disruption in the supply chain, a earthquake, etc. They know what to do in this case. What they were not prepared is disaster management. It's another story. It's an order of magnitude above crisis. It's disaster. The one we have had now is maybe one we have every 50 years or something like that. So people did not plan for it. I think in the future, they are going to start thinking about a new domain of management, which is disaster management, which is if something unpredictable and big is happening, how can we react? How can we immediately set up a process to deal with the unexpected? You cannot solve what is unexpected by definition, since it's unexpected, but at least you can be ready to receive the problem and make sure that you have the people available to tackle it and to know what to do when something like that happens. You know, you have regions of the world where you have a lot of earthquakes, as you know, and companies are ready. You know, they say, oh, it's an earthquake, I know exactly what to do. All right. Other places like mine in Switzerland, we have never an earthquake, so nobody is planning for it, you know? So I think that you can really be more resilient, but I think you should also be ready to tackle something which is unexpected. Now, inside companies, you do that by running scenarios, scenario planning. You imagine a number of scenarios. Some are more crazy than others, but at least they help you to be ready in case something unexpected is coming. This is definitely possible.
Nice. We have 2-3 minutes more. It will be nice to talk about the speaking branch. We have Afghanistan National Professional Speaker Association, which we founded, and now we found it for the future. But the future is looking different. Before we could have like gatherings, like thousands of people in a room, in a big hall, but now it will be different. So how the speaking branch will get affected by this crisis?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, but number one, I think that there will be two phases. The first phase is people are going to gather again, there is no doubt, but with some distancing measures. I mean, we will be separated by 1 meter. Maybe people will need to be very careful about sanitary measures, wear a mask, etc. And it means that when you had 1,000 people, you will only be able to have 500. That's the first thing. But these meetings, if the people in the room are local, they don't have to travel. I think those meetings will resume, definitely, because, you know, we are, as human beings, we need to meet other people. I mean, it's very nice to see you, Tariq. It would be better to meet you in person. Okay.
Thank you so much.
We need to meet. But then what is important is that if you have meetings where people have to travel to the conference, and that's the one which are going to be most probably most affected, because I suspect a lot of companies today are being reluctant to let their employee travel. And they will say, you know, just stay home, it's too risky to travel. And that's where what we are doing now, to have Zoom, to have all those kind of remote conferencing system will take over, will be more convenient. But my feeling is that we need also a business model. We cannot continue forever to have this thing, let's say, free, when it implies a lot of work for people in everywhere. So I think that it will be important to make the distinction. Local meetings are going to open up relatively quickly. International meeting where people have to travel to the same place, it's going to take more time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor, for your time. Hope we can have more discussion and talk.
Thank you very much, Tariq, for hosting me, and I wish you the very best to you and your organization.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, that you joined with us, and hope we see again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.